So we're pretty much at time. So I guess everybody knows why we're here. This is our third London meeting this year. Usually we would do something at a brewery. Obviously, that's a little bit more challenging this year given COVID. Hopefully, we're starting to come out, so we'll try and do something for next year. For anybody who hasn't been here before, there are essentially myself, Linda, Chris, Dave, and Gareth, the team bringing this event to you today. So none of us, with the exception of Linda, work for VMware, as I keep forgetting. So we're here really to provide some interesting content and share some knowledge. We're not here to flog you anything by any means. So we go to a lot great lengths to make sure we secure interesting and relevant technical content. And we do definitely go to a lot of trouble to weed out sales pitches because that's not what we're about. Just in terms of some rough practicalities for today. Given my connectivity problems, who knows where the hell we're going to be later on. But yeah, I think it's important, and we've all been doing this now for at least a year and a half. So, but please do make sure you mute yourselves during presentations. We've got the chat window on the side, or you can tweet us on #LunVMUG if there's a problem or you need some help with something. Would say generally, if you've got audio problems, it's more than likely to be your end, unless everybody's shouting about it. But if you need some help with that, chat us on the side, and we'll do what we can. So everything we talk about here is essentially considered public. If you've got something you're showing that's under some kind of NDA, please just do make folks aware. We are recording this session and we'll be chopping it up later for consumption on YouTube. So do let us know if there's something there that should be talked about publicly. Fire alarm, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. And I guess I don't really have to say this, right? We are, I like to think we're a friendly bunch here. Most of us actually know each other on the call anyway, but if you do see something that you don't like, do let us know so we can fix it. So as we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? So we do normally we have these 3 London events, then we put on the national UserCon or UK VMUG event. We obviously couldn't do that last year because of COVID, and we did it online. We are hoping, fingers crossed, that things are going the right way, and we are certainly planning to put something on live on November the 25th back at the National Space Centre. So really cool venue if you haven't managed to get there in the past. So we can have a full day of events, and hopefully we're going to put on the curry before. We will also, I think it's likely, it's proved quite popular, the whole kind of virtual format. So I think it's likely we will try and do something online as well to kind of complement the event. Exact plans for this still kind of shaking out, and obviously depending on which way government guidance and rules and regulations go closer to that date, obviously would potentially have an impact on that. So like I say, fingers crossed, live, 3D, in person, people you can touch, as long as they let you touch them. Don't go touching people if you don't want you to touch them. We're probably all a bit confused about how that works, given we've all had to work from home for so long. The URL at the bottom, so the tiny URL / UK VMUG video, has got a bunch of the videos, certainly pretty much all the content, or in fact all of the content from last year and the years before, if you wanted to go and catch up on things that were talked about in the past. So if we look at some of the things that have happened since we last met in March, I think probably the biggest piece of news is obviously Raghu's been appointed Pat Gelsinger's successor, so he's now the new CEO of VMware. His Twitter handle's there if you want to tweet him and say hello. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to receive your product feedback directly. VMware and there's VMware and Dell are, I think they've completed, or they're still in the last stages of. To be honest, I work in the financial services industry, and I don't understand it. It's quite a complicated spin-off of some equity. You can read all about it on the internet. The one thing I did really want to draw your attention to, and I'm sure we're all diligent, and we do watch the security advisories that come from VMware. So this is the VMSA 2021-0010. Has been talked about for a while, since I think at least February. There have been a couple of fixes and updates. If you search for that VMSA article number, you'll get to the latest knowledge base page about that. This is a pretty serious one. If you look at the CSS scale for this, it goes up to 9.8, right? And given the worst on that scale is 10, this is a pretty severe one. So the patches have been out for a while. The guidance has been updated in the last couple of weeks. So I would urge you to go and have a look at that. There's also been a lot of coverage in the press of people who have their vCenters connected directly to the internet. I kind of have to ask why, because to me this is the equivalent of taking ILOs or DRACs out of the back of your servers and plugging them directly onto the internet. That's never a good idea. I can't understand anybody that would do that. But there are over 5,000 of them, I think, at last count on the internet that were unpatched. So that really needs to be done. I'm sure everyone on here does the right thing, but make sure you spread the word.
Just to add to that, Simon, quickly. Sorry, there was another VMSA that got released 48 hours ago now. So it's worth people checking that one out as well, because it's, again, another authentication one. So
do you want to stick the number in the chat?
I will do. Yeah, literally hot off the press. I just thought I'd mention it because I've been working on that one. So I'll stick it in the chat for anyone as well. But keep an eye on that one, because it does leverage people being able to get in unauthenticated by the looks of it. So that's it's not quite 9.8, but it's still pretty scary.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of reinforces. I mean, even lab equipment. I mean, I never used to think too much about my lab equipment. It's on my own network, and it's. But even if you look at the way some of the ransomware things now spread, right? You get something like that on your home network, that could potentially then trash a whole bunch of other stuff that you've got that maybe you didn't think would be particularly at risk, or worse, use your lab equipment that you've been a bit lackadaisical in patching as a vector to get to something that you do care about a lot more. So yeah, definitely worth looking at. In tech, I mean, there haven't been a huge amount of kind of product announcements from VMware since we last met, but there's certainly been a lot of discussion about RAN, or radio access network. So this is, for me, I used to work in the telco space. Telcos used to be all about really kind of big, heavy, expensive hardware that they put into racks and distributed around the country. Sound familiar? Kind of what we used to do before virtualization. So VMware have done a whole bunch of work, over the last 10 years with those to be able to support kind of virtualized instances of carrier equipment, so things that would carry voice, for example. And now as we get into 5G, all of the more complicated things like the stuff that physically manages radio masts, all the telemetry and things that come with that. So there's quite interesting press releases and some technical detail around it. I mean, really, it's kind of one of these kind of industry branding pieces, bits of VMware technology kind of grouped together into logical lumps for vertical markets. But there's some really cool stuff there, and certainly making use of some of the Tanzu functionality and some of the very clever software that's there from Cohere Technologies to deliver that stuff out to the radio edge, if you want to put it that way, right? So we were talking about masts earlier, but this is something that potentially runs in a cabinet at the end of your street in a really small form factor. So some quite interesting stuff to look at there. So if I were to look at our agenda today, so once I shut up and managed to hopefully fix my router a bit later on, so we've got Vern up after. Quite an interesting topic. We've got a short break, so we'll do the same sort of thing as we usually do. If you want to grab yourself a coffee or beverage of choice, switch on your webcam, and we'll have a bit of a chat during the break. We then got Gareth to come and look at microsegmentation with VRNI and NSXT. Lunch, I think I've said this joke's getting a bit old now, but it's a bring your own lunch affair. Unfortunately, we can't provide sandwiches as we would usually do if we were in person. So, we'll be hanging around during that time. So if you want to come and similarly turn on your camera, and we'll have a bit of a chat. And then Robbie is talking about Tanzu build service, which actually definitely looks very interesting, particularly if you look at how that maps into a lot of VMware's product strategy around Tanzu and containers, etc. Then got another short break. We have tried to space it out as much as possible today, because it is, sitting on your in your chair back to back through sessions obviously does get a bit tiring. So then we're going to close out with Gary's VRA and Terraform session. So we're going to wrap slightly earlier than we usually do. There's a slight error on this slide in that we're not going to do the close for 45 minutes. So I will try and get through that as quickly as possible. And then we will have our kind of virtual drinks by Zoom. So same as we usually do, hang around, bring a drink, bring a biscuit, or whatever you want. Given we're doing this online, there's no real requirement for sponsors other than VMware, who obviously provided the or VMUG, VMware directly from that, who provide the capabilities of the Zoom, etc., to be here. But we don't have the normal kind of sponsors that we would have. Well, as I said earlier, we're not here to sell you anything. This is one thing that VMUG itself do sell. It is something I think is actually quite good, particularly if you run a home lab environment. You'll see these training licenses that are available. Has 365-day eval licenses for all of these products. I actually have to confess I didn't update this list prior to this, but it will be worth checking and seeing what's on the current list, because if you've ever worked trying to build your own lab environment, you'll know how difficult it can be to get licenses for that, and obviously registering with Dave Smith 1, Dave Smith 2, Dave Smith 3 repeatedly for eval licenses does get a little bit tiring eventually. So it's a good way to get you a 365-day licenses for those products. Particularly given you can get things like NSX on this, which you can't generally get very easily without being very friendly with some kind of sales rep somewhere. It's cool. If you look at the VMware site, I always misread this as $200,000 a year. It's actually not. It's $200 a year, so around about £144. But it does also get you a bunch of other things like discounts on VCAP and VCP exams. So I'd like to try and keep this as interactive as possible during the day. And we normally try and do this during Twitter because it's kind of easy for everybody to get to. So we've got some prizes at the end of the day. We're really looking for the most interesting thing that you stockpiled during lockdown. If we have 400 people tweeting toilet roll, it's not going to be very interesting to try and be creative. This is my kind of my monthly moan, right? So, as I said earlier, we do go to great lengths to make sure that we pick up really good and interesting, relevant technical content. And the way that we do that is by people who are practitioners, people like yourselves who are out there working with the technology, coming to talk about what you do. So we do have this kind of ever-running call for papers, and actually the people you're seeing a bit later on today, several of those actually came in via this forum. So they got in touch, they kind of logged an idea for a topic. Doesn't have to be a fully formed idea. It can be just a kind of rough idea of what you'd like to talk about and an outline, and we can work with you to kind of form that up. You don't have to be the most seasoned presenter, as you've seen from the hash I'm making at this, right? We're open to anything, and we're able to come and help you through that as well. We've done plenty of dry runs for people who maybe aren't that confident in presenting, etc. So, like I say, do get in touch. That URL is permanently available, and we'll try and get you through. So with that, I'll shut up and hand over to Vern, who is our first speaker today. Gareth, I don't know whether you've switched over there.
So you know where you are. So these are obviously our next event really that we've definitely committed to, and we've definitely got a will run date for, is the National VMUG, which will be on November the 25th, hopefully at the Space Centre. So I would keep an eye on vmug.com. If you're already a member, you'll get some emails a bit closer to the date with some of the details as they start to firm up. I suspect we will be running kind of a hybrid event, so we are obviously going to do that in person, but we will probably at least provide the recordings that we usually provide, but maybe we'll try and see what we can do in a slightly more interactive manner. For London, so we haven't yet obviously planned out our 2022 dates, so we will be doing that as soon as things start to open up and the people are back at Tech UK, and we can look at what how many craters there are in their schedule. I would suspect we may be a little bit challenged for some of the dates. We may not be able to run on the Thursdays that we usually run on, as I suspect they're going to have a kind of backlog of events that will be rescheduled into 2022. So again, keep an eye out for that. But all things being well, 2022 London should be back to normal, whatever normal is. As ever, email, website, and Twitter hashtags are always ones that we keep an eye on. So we have recorded what we've got here today. Gareth's going to do the brilliant job he does every time of chopping the video up and getting it up onto YouTube. So the YouTube channel the link's a bit further down, but you can just Google London VMUG YouTube and it'll get you there. I think we talked about that. That's the bottom is the link for what we're doing for the link for our YouTube channel is at the bottom here. So fingers crossed we will be doing live in-person 3D stereo Mario Nation people. So we didn't get very many people tweet exactly what it was they were hoarding, so I took an executive decision, and we are going to award our prize to Michael, who I don't think is on at the moment, so I'll get in touch with him and we'll send him some lovely VMUG prizes. again, yeah, honestly, you've seen some brilliant sessions here today, and those did come from the earlier call for papers submissions that we had. So, they do turn into real things, and we're really interested to see some kind of interesting content, particularly, personally speaking, particularly where we're doing those kind of pipeline things, any kind of automated configuration of stuff, they make for actually really good VMUG sessions and demos. I don't underestimate anybody on this call how much effort it is to put those together, putting those demos together, and without fail, they fail just before you go on stage and have to present them. So it's difficult. It can be quite stressful to put together, but you can get a lot out of it, and certainly the people here would be interested to see what you've got to talk about. So with that, we're pretty much to the close. So this is our last London event. So do keep an eye out for the national one. We're a little bit down on numbers today because of holidays and various other things. I've already seen there are quite a few people watching on YouTube, and certainly when we put the recordings up, they get really good traction there. So Gary, we'll drop you some of the links as well. So once the videos are up, if you want to maybe link to them on your blog, so if someone wanted to come and catch up on that session, they can do that directly. So with that, it's 4 o'clock. I make it beer o'clock. So I shall finish the terrible slide that I put together for this. So there you go.
So that call for papers, is that the same for MusicCon?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there are really two, right? There's the one that we always run, and VMUG themselves do have a call for papers as well. So we'll end up with a hybrid of the two. So we're going as wide as possible.